Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. And if you would, it'd be really cool if you took a second and just expanded the description to the episode and click the links for like our Instagram and our TikTok and the Facebook and the website, and just bookmark all those things and followed us on our other social media outlets, because, you know, you'll get little snippets of the episode throughout the week that we're recording. You know, you'll get a little piece of that in an Instagram reel or in a TikTok post. And it'd just be really cool if you folks decided to help us grow those networks too. But all that aside, Russ, we had a massively important week in herd athletics, weekend really in herd athletics, to narrow it down a little bit. And it was a epic Friday, one of the more epic single days in herd athletics history, and things kind of went right. And we want to talk about all of it, and we want to talk about everything else that has kind of happened since our last episode, obviously. And before we can get into all that, we've got to get ourselves a word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
Now, let's get down to business, because long awaited, there was some stuff that has been literal decades in the making. Mm-hmm. And herd fans turned out for it. I know we're going to talk about it, but before we even get to the baseball team, let's talk about, I don't know, at least 5 things, but I'm going to say 5 things. Give me 5 things that every herd fan needs to know this week.
Here's 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by Ignite Link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, Abby Herring, Kylie Maston, and Diana Goodman named to the Sun Belt Conference All-Conference Indoor Track and Field team.
Not totally surprising, but it was really nice to see that third member of the squad, Diana Goodman, make the All-SBC team, because I don't know how in the hell we turned into this pole vault school, but now that's several years running that we've had an all-conference pole vaulter. And I think that's just one of those cool, unique things, man. You know, that it's kind of like, who would have thunk that Marshall University would have been a pole vault school? You know, it's kind of like that same deal where we had all-conference long snappers for like almost a decade, you know, straight. And this is just one of those cool things. Obviously, you expected to see the great Abby Herring. Obviously, you expected to see big-time Kylie Maston. We knew that was going to happen. I think everybody under the sun that's a Sun Belt track and field follower figured that was going to happen. And while we don't want to diminish that, it's really just extra cool that Diana Goodman landed there. So three all-conference track and field athletes for the herd. Not too bad, when just a week ago we were talking about how utterly dominant both in men's and women's track and field that Arkansas State is. So when you have programs that are built like they're built, and you know, 5 consecutive championships, you mentioned it. 3, I'll take 3. I think that's pretty cool, man.
Very, very cool. Love to see Diana Goodman on there, like you mentioned, picking up from Macy Majoy from last year.
Yep.
Abby Herring, again, leading off this 5 things segment. I mean, how many times now can we count? We need that intern from Gray America to come in here and do a tally for us and see, because I know it's up there. Number 2, Abby Beeman named to the Women's College All-Star Game player watch list.
Why are we on a watch list? Why are we just not getting? Hey, you're an invite. Don't give me a
Yeah.
watch list. You
Yeah.
know, you have been saying for weeks upon weeks she's the best passer in college basketball, bar none.
Bar none.
We had a buddy of ours kind of echo that sentiment. You know, and I think the stats speak for themselves. Of course, the team success really speaks for itself. But you know, I hate to be this way, but it feels like if Abby was on a bigger name school, there wouldn't be no watch list to it. It
Mm-mm.
would be you're getting the invite, kid, you know?
Mhm.
And that's a bummer because she can flat out ball. She's proven it, you know, all season long and has still, with all she's been able to do, vastly flown under the radar on an of the week scale in the Sun Belt Conference. I think it's damn near criminal that she hasn't been you know, that hasn't reached that accolade and of the week accolade numerous times this season, but yet here we are. I think you have to be thinking if Marshall, as the best team in the conference, only happens to have one all conference selection, it's going to be Abby Beam, first team
Mhm.
all conference selection. I think we have an argument for several. But you know how these conferences do, man. Sometimes they just like to spread the love around to as many teams as they can. And sometimes just certain players get the shaft when they are deserving. But this is still cool nonetheless. I was a little, I can't say upset because I'm not upset that it was, you know, makes the watch list. I'm thinking like, come on, like what more can she do? Do we have to be a tournament team in order for her to get an invite? Like, let's be real. She's one of the best point guards in the country. Okay. The career stats tell you that, right? The utter domination this year tells you that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Just give me the invite. Give her the invite. Don't give it to me. Give her the invite because I think she deserves it.
How about I hit you with a couple of stats and
Yeah,
things here?
please.
10th in the nation in assists, 6.2 a game. Top 10 in the nation in the one category that you, for whatever reason, that has become synonymous with a point guard. You know,
Sure.
point guards nearly all the time are going to be the ones that have the highest assist totals. 6.2. What would you guess out of the 10th would she rank first through 10th in minutes played?
Ooh, I don't
Out
know.
of out of just those 10, not top 10 in the nation.
Right. Oh, just the
Top
10
top
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 10
10 in
assist leaders.
assists.
Just
Yeah.
the top 10 assist leaders. Where does she rank among those 10 in minutes per game? Well,
Yep.
we do a lot of subbing. We do. So I'm going to say ninth out of 10.
10 out of 10 by well over a minute.
Wow.
That she is 10th out of 10 in that. The points per game, 16.8. She would be 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. And again, that's fifth out of the
10.
minutes. Yeah, but the minutes played, she's well below those. The top three are 6 to 7 ahead of her in minutes
Hmm.
played per game. Her 3-point field goal percentage is right up there. Uh, I mean, Caitlin Clark is number one at 39.5. Abby's at 38.0. And I mean, number one on these top 10
Yes, I'm with you.
on the assist thing.
I'm with you.
There are people in the top 10 that are shooting threes better than higher percentage than Caitlin Clark. No one in the country is shooting them at the rate that she's shooting them, though.
Hmm.
And we have talked several times about Caitlin Clark and Abby Beeman being the only two active players to have the stats of the points and the rebounds and the assists. It is just criminal that she is not getting more publicity. It is criminal that she has not gotten a Player of the Week award for the Sun Belt this year. Now, maybe when this show comes out and Monday rolls around, we will have her in that spot for the first time this year. 0 to date this year. We've only had one out of the unanimously best team in the conference. We've had one Player of the Week, and that's when Aislinn Hayes got it one week.
Hmm.
And I got more later to talk. I don't want to ramble more about women's basketball totally, until we get to talk about that. But just hear about Abby, top 10 in assists. She's up there as a 5'4" guard. She has a ton of rebounds this year and 2 triple doubles to her name. She's the best passer in America right now. I did not say the best female passer. I keep saying that. She is the best passer in America right now. There should be no watch list. There should be a, yes, she is on the All-Star game roster.
Yeah, it does get a little frustrating, but I'll tell you, when you say those things to me, this is what it says. It says that Marshall is gonna suffer in the player of the week categories because of the style of play that we play. We sub a lot of players in and players out, and you're not going to end up with like a player that's going to have a super monster stat line. You will from time to time, because if you
Right.
get hot and
Game
you're
to
just hot,
game.
you're just hot. But we have so many players that are in double digit scoring. So no one really is outshining anyone else on this Marshall roster. So it's almost like, yeah, it's great to have a player of the week, but you're having like Marshall's pretty much the team of the week every week, because all they do is win. And I think individually, every player that we have will trade an of the week individual award to get two wins that week.
100%.
And that's kind of what it's all about.
Final thing that I want to tell you about this top 10, again, Caitlin Clark's first in the nation, 8.7. Abby is 10th at 6.2. Caitlin Clark is also first in rebounds amongst these 10 players with 7.4. Abby is, oh, I'm sorry. No, there was one ahead of Caitlin Clark. So Caitlin Clark is second. Abby is third at 5.8 rebounds. A 5'4" point guard
Right.
has 5.8 rebounds a game.
And I think when you start talking about that kind of stuff, not only is it impressive, but you're talking about the other side of that. That Caitlin Clark is probably going to be player of the year.
Right.
And we're talking about our gal just being mentioned for a watch list. You know what I mean? And that's where the big disparity comes, and that's where it's not cool. Like, if a player can play, you got to give them the recognition. And you can't say that Marshall hasn't played anybody. The Sun Belt's a good conference. We played a strong out of conference, and she's just played well all year long. So what other argument do you have for me other than the fact that you're showing large school bias versus small school bias?
Again, I could talk about this for hours, but let's move on to number 3. Here's one. It's not about sports. It's about Marshall, and you saw it and put it out there, but here's to everyone that did not see it. Marshall University ranks number 1 in online masters in computer science for 2024.
Yeah, how about that? Another number 1 academic program. We've sung the praises of several programs in the past. You're talking about like forensic science and crime scene investigation, that type of thing. When Marshall wildly, that's another one of those things. It's like, how, because we're not in this. I don't know. You would think it would be somewhere in like New York or something like that, that have these huge police departments and there's money that can flow into those programs. And yet it happens right here at Marshall. And now it's yet another number 1. Man, I'm telling you, this university on an academic level has made strides in such a short amount of time that it's becoming so much easier to recruit talent, academic talent, to Marshall. And also that helps your athletic programs, because we have athletes that want to engage in programs like this. Now, I know the one we're talking about is an online program. I get that. But overall, academically, it's just becoming so much easier to get more than just people that want to be teachers or come to Marshall for the nursing program or, the School of Medicine and all these other programs that have been added. You're talking about the aviation school and the pharmaceutical school and the engineering school and all these things that didn't exist, Russ, when we were undergrads. They were not even a choice to be there. Even if I wanted to do that, I couldn't do it at Marshall. And now I can. And that's what we needed, man. We need, there are still some things out there. I will argue to the death of me, and we know the real reasons why. So people can speculate all they want, but we know the real reasons why. A school that is named after a Supreme Court justice doesn't have a law school is beyond like hilarious to me. And we
Mhm.
know why it doesn't exist. People can say whatever the hell they want. We know why it doesn't exist at Marshall. But I don't care. Anytime we get an opportunity to step away from athletics and talk about academics for Marshall University, I love to do it. So I'm glad you included that this week.
And just to remind everybody, we are coming up on the 5-year anniversary of Marshall becoming an R2 research institute. And we, from everything that I understand, are moving toward R1, which makes you, the elite of the elite in research. There are currently 146 universities that are R1 status. So it's not like we're talking about top 10 or anything like that. But when you're R1, it's just things open up so much differently for you. Also, when you're talking about athletic conferences, if you're
That's
in
right.
R1, that makes you a lot more attractive to go to a bigger athletic conference. And from everything that I understand, we are headed that way, and it is something circled as a goal for this university to do. That is also something that has been held back by the same reason that we do not have a law school. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, those days are over.
Yeah.
We have Brad Smith here now, and Brad Smith, when he wants something, he makes sure that it gets done.
Yeah. He's a needle mover. Right.
Yeah.
And we've had great university presidents in
Hmm.
the past. We had,
Yep.
Stephen Kopp was wonderful. And it was an
Yeah.
absolute tragedy to just lose him
Hmm.
when we did and how we did,
Yeah.
because he was making things happen for Marshall University as well. But
Yep.
now Brad Smith is in the seat, and it's a little bit different, right? Because he's from Canova, he's a Marshall alum, he's uber successful in the business world. His network and contacts just go. There's nowhere they don't go, right? So he's a needle mover. And now you find somebody that comes and wants to put Marshall on a different pedestal and is willing to put the work and make things happen and make those phone calls and have those meetings and do those things. And you're right. The thing that a lot of people probably don't really consider is when it comes to realignment time, you individually might not give a crap about academics, but those other schools certainly do. Like, look at the Big Ten. Every one of those schools, I believe, is an AAU university, and that's a massive thing, right? And when you hear, I'm not tossing shade at anybody, but when you hear schools like Rice constantly get brought up in realignment conversations, it's not because they're going to compete for a national championship in football anytime soon.
Hmm.
Largely it's because of their academic prowess. When you hear about them on a short list to when they were trying to save the Pac-12, and you hear Rice and you're like, what? Well, those are the reasons why. It's because Pac-12 schools are very, very, very big academic schools, and Rice fits that bill for them. And that's a priority, a lot of times over some of these athletic programs. So it's a big deal to be an R2 school, and it's an even bigger deal if you're able to attain that R1 status. And by golly, if we can make that happen, that will be a landmark day, a watershed day in Marshall University history.
Number 4, the complete football schedule is out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Reactions.
Let's talk
I've
about it.
got it up here if you don't, but let's start off. I'm going to run down these real quick. I'm just going to say uh, if it's a home game, I'll just say who it is. If it's an away game, I'll say at, but I'm going to say the date as well. Stony Brook, Saturday, August 31st. At Virginia Tech, Saturday, September 7th. Bye week, September 14th. At Ohio State, Saturday, September 21st. Western Michigan, Saturday, September 28th. Appalachian State, Saturday, October 5th. At Georgia Southern, Saturday, October 12th. 5 days later, Georgia State, Thursday, October 17th. Bye week, October 26th. Got a second bye week there. ULM, Saturday, November 2nd. At Southern Miss, Saturday, November 9th. Coastal Carolina, Saturday, November 16th. And then the final 2 games are on the road. at Old Dominion Saturday, November 23rd, and at James Madison Saturday, November 30th.
Yeah. Okay. So my initial reaction, I tweeted most of them, in bullet points when you came out. We only have back-to-back home games one time, and it's very early in the season. So while that kind of sucks, at least it's early in the season, which should give you great weather. Hopefully the turnout is really good and all that kind of stuff. You have two marquee Power 5 road games that if you're able to go 2-0 in those, or at least split those and go 1-1, it's going to be kind of a thumbs up. Of course, Ohio State is massively important on the Herd schedule, and nobody is going to give Marshall an opportunity to win that game. Nobody is going to be talking about look out for Marshall in the upset, and that's fine. I'm not singing that tune right now either because, hell, we don't even know what we look like. It's we don't have a clue. And the only thing that you can say about having Ohio State in that era or in that date slot is like you got a bye week leading into it, and it's their last out of conference game. They have their Big Ten opener the following week. So there's a few things that might help you, here and there. But I mean, look, just like with Herd soccer, it's always a reload with Ohio State. It's never a rebuild. I don't care what they say, what their fans say. Oh, we're rebuilding. No, they're not. They're never rebuilding, because they're always in that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 win thing. A rebuild is not making a bowl, and they're never probably going to hit that threshold. Then you got App State for the SBC home opener. That's kind of wild, but I also think, I don't know this, I'm speculating based on the other day, I think that's going to be homecoming. Because otherwise you're looking at a midweek, and that ain't going to be homecoming. Yeah, and then you're into November.
Yeah, they might have, because we've had an October homecoming before. Very recently we had one. I think that it could be Saturday, November the 2nd. If it's not, it's going to be Saturday, October the 5th. I think it's between those two games, and it will not be a Thursday game. But also, you have seen all kinds of different institutions, us occasionally, usually not, but having an early homecoming. I just don't see it being Saturday, September the 28th against Western Michigan. I think we're really down to two teams or in two games, and I see it leaning closer to Appalachian State.
Me too. I mean, traditionally in my, just reaction thinking back, like, oh yeah, it's usually like the mid to late October is when they, and we just don't have that game. The mid-October game is a midweek, and that ain't going to happen. So I don't really think ideally you want to get into November for homecoming. You could, because ULM is probably a more winnable game than App State. But the other side of that coin is people will go, ooh, App State for homecoming. I'll go in for that one. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit of an added draw, your classic SoCon rivalry. And that's, and homecoming is by and large for your alumni anyway. So I get the idea of an added draw. I hope it's October 5th for Appalachian State. I think that would be awesome. SBC opener and homecoming, I think that would be great. Georgia State for the midweek, I'm not mad at that one either, because they got us last year, but they're in a little bit of turmoil. Head coach left, third day of spring ball. They're not an ideal. I hate that for them, but midweeks have not treated us great so far. 0-2 on the midweek, and it'd be nice to get one, in front of the primetime viewing audience. So that would be nice. Also love, obviously, having Southern Miss back on the schedule. This one will be in Hattiesburg. Who knows when we'll get them back to Huntington. You get ULM for the first time ever in Huntington. The only other time we played ULM was in the 1987 1AA National Championship game, Russ. I don't know if you knew that, but I found that out just the other day by accident. I thought we had never played before, but that's when it was. And that was 43-42, by the way, for those that aren't that old. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm sure some people that are going to be listening to this are going, hell yeah, I remember that game. And you get Coastal Carolina on 75 week. Good luck. We owe them one. We owe them one for that home game a couple of years ago. So
we owe them one for the road game last year too. I mean, that was bad.
Yeah.
The one thing, we got 2 bye weeks here. If they could have had that Thursday game slide a week, to where you had a little bit of a buffer and not have a 5-day turnaround for that. You would have had, at this point now, you've got, after that 5 days, you've got a full 16 days before your next game.
Yeah.
And if that could have changed and just flip-flopped that second bye week with that midweek game, it would have put a buffer in there like we have had and just about everybody has had. I know some people have had a short week and things in there, but every time for us it had been like, okay, you play the Saturday and then you wait until the next Wednesday or Thursday and then you wait until the next Saturday after that. Not now. 5-day turnaround.
Well, Coach Huff has had a very bad string of luck with bye weeks since he's been here, and I hate that for him, but also he's getting to be a little bit of a pro at it. So it's not like this is something new and they don't have a system in place, and that they knew kind of what it was going to look like, and they have a plan for that. And no, it's not ideal, especially if you're looking at big homecoming game against App State, if that's what it turns out to be, and quick turnaround for a midweek. That'll kind of suck. And I'll tell you what really sucks is finishing your season at home on 75 week. You always love to have one more game at home, but it's awful cold in Huntington in late November, so it'll be pretty nice for folks to not have to sit during those games. The attendance generally dwindles late in the season. And the only other thing I think is really cool is they locked us up with James Madison for quote unquote rivalry week, right? And I don't know if that's the beginning of what it could be our annual matchup with them, but I like that. And I think JMU probably likes that a lot. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but I think guys that we interact with probably like that, I know a lot of our fans are going to like that. And folks will go, well, wait a minute, James Madison and Old Dominion play. Yeah, they do, but they play the Oyster Bowl, and it doesn't have to be on rivalry week. It allows those two teams actually to build a new rival for rivalry week. So if this sticks, that'll be pretty cool. That would be really cool. I'm not mad at the schedule overall, but I will say this. The home slate is not as strong as the away slate. If you were looking at games, if those were flip-flopped, obviously if they were flip-flopped with the non-con, you'd be like, dang, what a stacked slate. Pretty even, but it would have been nice maybe to be at VT last year and have VT at home this year, because you'd have Stony Brook and VT and then, Western Michigan and Ohio State. But it is what it is. You can't always have the stellar non-conference. I think there are some people out there you're like intrigued by the matchup with Western Michigan and the history there with the MAC and the 99 MAC championship game and all of that. And we had some really good games with Western Michigan back in the MAC era. So it's a cool game to have on the schedule. We have an app and Coastal at home. That's going to happen obviously every other year. So that really strengthens that home schedule. It really puts some heat to the home slate at the Joan. There will be a couple of rowdy games for sure. You can guarantee those two will be rowdy. And it's just cool to have ULM for the first time ever in Huntington. So I'm not totally mad at it, but I don't know.
I got to fact check you here. The Oyster Bowl is not always between Old Dominion and James Madison.
I thought that's what they called that game.
Old Dominion is the constant, but there's a rotating team.
Really?
Yeah. Appalachian State played in the Oyster Bowl against Old Dominion last year.
So they must just designate a game as the Oyster Bowl.
They do. And what we're talking about here, the rivalry between Old Dominion and James Madison, if I'm not mistaken, that was the one I believe that they called the Royal Rivalry.
Oh, maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think that's the name, but I do know about the Oyster Bowl. I had to look up to see who the opponent was last year, but I remembered that it was a different Sun Belt opponent, and it was Appalachian State.
You're right. I was just confusing the name. I knew they did play the Oyster Bowl. I just assumed that it was, but you're right. It's the Royal Rivalry. You're right. You are right as rain on that one. I tell you what, though. I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it right now. We got the email the other day about season ticket renewals and stuff, and I don't know if you caught it, but they're not changing any of the prices from 2023, so that's cool. If Herd fans didn't see that, or if you haven't gotten the email, you didn't know about that, you can expect the same pricing from 2023, which is cool. So it's not going to be more expensive for you from a ticket standpoint, at least to see a Marshall game. So I would encourage you to buy season tickets when you can. If you're renewing, make sure you renew. And if you're on the fence about being a first-time season ticket buyer, pull the trigger, man, because you got 2023 pricing in 2024. So for all of that inflation talk about everything else under the sun, and we all know that it exists, you're not gonna see inflated ticket prices for herd football in 2024. They're doing you a solid. They're doing us all a solid. So take advantage of that solid deal and buy season tickets for the first time, or make sure you renew them. We certainly will be.
All right, let's finish up this 5 things here with number 5. Your women's basketball team is the regular season Sun Belt Conference champion, have a double bye in the tournament as the number 1 seed, and are only 1 win away from tying the high mark for season wins at 24. Currently 23 wins going into the SBC tournament.
Unbelievable season for Marshall women's basketball, a team that was picked ninth?
Yeah. 9th out of 14.
9th in the conference. And the job that Kim Caldwell and her staff has done, the job that these players have done after a roughly 500 season for the first 8 games or so,
2-4 in the first 6 games.
Right.
21-2 since then.
But finished, what did I say? 17-1 in conference, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Went on a 10-game win streak, lost 1, now on a 7-game win streak. And if they win the SBC tournament, they'll have 2 different 10-game win streaks in the same season. Utterly amazing. You cannot say enough good things about this women's basketball team. I am really, really glad that women's basketball started becoming a ticketed event, because it allowed us to become season ticket holders. And for guys like me, that still means something. I still like saying that. I still like saying I'm a season ticket holder. Maybe the luster is faded for younger generations of fans, and that's fine. But I like being able to say that, because that says to me, like, I don't care what your season is from a wins and losses standpoint. I'm going to support you no matter what. That's what that kind of says to me. I'm buying into you in the very beginning, and that's what I want to do. And of course, we gave all the tickets away. And so we were able to continually send fans to games, some of them for the first time ever, and some of them have gone before, and we were able to send them back. But I tell you what, they were just such a fun team to watch all season long. Fun team. And to win the regular season championship the way they did, in utter blowout fashion. They did it but to finish the season, let me say that, to finish the season in utter blowout fashion, absolutely amazing. I think this team is special. I hate to prognosticate, but it feels like this team deserves a bid, even if they don't win the conference, because they're so damn good. Now, they can't get bounced in their first tournament game. I think they would have to at least go to the championship game, and lose in a close one.
Yeah.
They can't go and get blown out, but if they go and lose 97-96, it's going to be really, really, really hard for that committee, if they're being truthful with themselves and wanting to put the best teams in the tournament. It's going to be really hard for them to go, you know what, Marshall's not one of the best, because they are.
When you look at the net rankings, they're not there yet. They're below the threshold that you would be. They're outside of the top 64. If you look at this from the perspective of they started out 2-4 because it was a brand new system, and you just look at their conference slate, or you look at from the time they played Florida, they've had 2 losses. They beat Florida 91-88. Then they went on. This is part of a 21-2 run that they're on. They lost to James Madison, and again, they were without that game. Mahogany Matthews, she had been out several games before that, but she is our only true forward, and they just beat us in the paint. And I just don't see any team beating us in this conference tournament unless we are the team that beats us. We beat ourselves with missing too many shots, with too many turnovers, with allowing points in the paint like that James Madison game. I think that is the only way right now we are head and shoulders above because of the confidence that has built. What have we gone through? I wrote an article about it. We lost our number one scorer. We were 2-4 with her. We're 21-2 without her. We lost Mahogany Matthews for 8, maybe 9 games. We lost one game during that time. That's 40% of our starters from the beginning of the year. We've had other injuries. We've had all the excuses that you could think of. Oh, well, we brought in a D2 player in Brianna Campbell. Oh, well, we, lost Rochelle Scott. We lost Mahogany Matthews for a little bit. We've got a brand new system. It's going to take some time. We are 23-6 in a brand new system with a couple of former D2 players on our roster that are thriving. And we have just done it. And it's not just, hey, it's the system. You can see early we ran this system in the first 6 games, and it just was not working. And you could tell that, hey, when this does work, it's going to be great. And I thought, I'm sure you and several other people thought, it'll work after, a year or two when there's been time, and it worked immediately after that. And they built on that Florida game, and they had adversity stacked against them in many games where they were down going into the fourth quarter or down at halftime, down 19 points, down 21 points, down 17 points. They never, ever seemed to be out of it. And that's why I think that they deserve to go, because right now, they are definitely a top 64 team in the country. Yeah. I don't care what the net ranking says. They are right now. And if the committee looks and says, as of right now, this team deserves to be in, that would be true to what they are.
Show me 63 other teams that want to go up against Marshall in a tournament setting when it's win or go home. Yeah. There are some teams that, the upper elite, that they fear no one.
Right.
But that other 63rd, 62nd, probably all the way up to about the 50th team, they'd be like, nah, don't let them in this tournament, man. We don't. But you're right. The lone loss in conference was without Mahogany Matthews, right? And we needed that presence down low. And I'll tell you what, some of the other reasons this has worked. We talk a lot about Brianna Campbell. We talk a lot about Abby Beam. They're great players and they're scorers. They do what they need to do, but it's the development of players like Meredith Mayer continues to catch fire and is turning into an absolute threat from beyond the arc, and it's players like CeCe Mays that hits big shots. Of course, Aislinn Hayes we've talked about. It's not just 1 or 2 players. You're talking about like 7, 8 players that can provide a lot of production for you when somebody's having an off night. It allows them to get the 5 on the floor at any given time that can make it work.
I'll do you one better. Talking with a really good friend of ours over at the softball game earlier today, and we were talking about women's basketball, and he said they run, and he was trying to think of how many deep. I said, well, listen, man, you can't do a line change of 5 in, 5 out, and not at least run 10 deep. They are getting significant minutes out of at least 10 players. And often it's a little bit more than that. It's crazy what they've accomplished. And I mean, I just cannot think right now. I've got this up. Last thing that I'm going to say, I'll flip it back to you for final thoughts before we close out the segment. 5th in the country right now, 85.4 points a game.
Right.
5th. And here's who's ahead of them. The top 3 are your no-doubters. Iowa Hawkeyes with Caitlin Clark, the LSU Tigers. By the way, both of those teams played in the national championship last game. South Carolina Gamecocks were undefeated earlier this year. I'm assuming they still are. I don't know. I haven't checked recently. And then Murray State is above us at 86. We are mere half a point away from being 4th behind 3 elite programs.
Yeah, and you're talking about 2 of those 3 are national champions. LSU
Mhm.
wins it a year ago. South Carolina's won it in the past, couple of years. So
Mhm.
you're in the elite of the elite offensively. And this net ranking thing, I mean, that's where you kind of get you're at the mercy. Most of your games are in the conference. And if you don't have a top to bottom strong conference, well, your net's going to suffer for that. But if you take the top handful of teams in in the Sun Belt, they're pretty strong teams. Marshall and James Madison and Troy, they're really strong. Those three teams are really strong. So I don't know. The Herd's got to win it. I mean, the best thing to do is just go on a 3-game streak, continue the win streak, not go on one, continue a this win streak, stretch it to 10, and just secure the auto bid, and then go from there. But I'm done. Let's go around the Herd.
All right, we're going to start off with. First we need to thank once again Jed and the Ignite Link crew for bringing us those 5 things every week. We couldn't do all this stuff that we do without you guys. Round the Herd, we're going to start off men's golf. They finished 4th out of 20 teams in the Loyola Collegiate, and that was their first team meet of the year. If you remember, we talked about sending a couple of guys down there, and we finished like 3 of the bottom 4, but it wasn't our team that we sent. Tyler Jones was tied for 13th at 6 under, and Ryan Bilby was tied for 16th at 5 under. Jones and Joseph Kolaski both had rounds of 67. Jones was in the second round, and then Kolaski, his final round, 67, really helped us move up a spot to the 4th ranking there. 4 out of 20 teams. That's a hell of a way to start.
I'll take it. We knew once the major players got together that team success would follow, and hey, this just proves it. I'll take it.
They are in the Sea Palms Invitational in St. Simons, Georgia, Thursday through Saturday.
Nice.
Women's golf. They also finished 13 or tied 13 out of 21 teams at the GCU Women's Invitational. Casey McIlvain, that's where I said also, led the Herd at tied for 13. She was 2 under on the tournament. Emily McClatchy shot a final round 68. They will be in the UNCW Invitational in Wallace, North Carolina, Monday and Tuesday.
Cool, man. I think both golf programs are playing pretty solid so far, man. This is like, it could always be better, but damn, I suck at golf. So, I think both of our programs are playing pretty solid to start this season off. I've got nothing bad to say about it.
When you see that we tied for the win of an individual with golf in their first team outing, and then the men finished 4th out of 20 as a team in their first outing, those are both really good starts to the season. So, we're going to build off that. Let's get over to baseball. We've got a lot to talk about this, but I just want to run through the scores first, and then we'll get back to talking about it. Last week we recorded while they were playing, and they ended up losing that game. Indiana State 12-5 last Sunday. Then here comes this weekend, first ever game at the Jack. They shut out Manhattan 3-0 on Friday yesterday. Earlier today they lost the second game of the series 5-4, and then they have the final game of the weekend tomorrow, Sunday, 3 p.m. Now, let's talk about this.
Okay. This is what I alluded to in the open. That is the part of the show that has literally been decades in the making. And unless you've been living under a rock or just absolutely refused to believe that it was a reality, Jack Cookfield was shockingly built and then outfitted. And the Herd got a locker room, and they put players in that locker room. And I'll be damned if we didn't trot out for an inaugural game at the Jack on Friday. And of course, I did not get to go, but I did get to watch a little bit of it on ESPN Plus, which was super cool. I know you were there. So, taking all kinds of great photos of the crowd and everything. 3,124. We'll see how long that stands as a record. But, man, we were getting some love from our conference mates. You and I, like on the ThunderCast, they were shouting us out because, of course, And they were, like, pumped for the Herd to play in their own ballpark. It was just so cool, man. Just such a cool day, such a cool moment. And, you were there. So talk about it.
Gates opened at 2. I was actually over there much earlier than that because I was over on the complex for the early softball game. I walked over. I saw Grant Traylor over there addressing the media and talking about where they would be stationed to get their video and this and that. And hey, we'll have this set up and that set up over there at 10 a.m. just working his tail off. Phil with um, the facilities and all the other facilities guys, but Phil was over there and I went over with him and we went into the dugout and everything. And he was just doing a last minute sweep of let's make sure this is perfect. This is perfect. This is perfect. We had guys on the building, the softball complex building, working on some electric on the outside at 10 a.m. Just doing these final little things, all the different contractors that have been over there just to make sure everything went off without a hitch. Now, I don't know that our listeners and viewers appreciate the level of the detail that went into all this to make sure it went off. Gates open at 2. I left the softball game at like 2:05, something like that. I wanted to wait until the half inning. And then I go over there and it's already packed. I mean, people had already been in there in the 10 minutes. I make my way around and I go down to the dugout club. Anyone that wants to, you really need to get with us to get into the dugout club. You can do so for as little as $25 a year. Go into their big tent. There's all these former baseball players in there. There's all these fans and people that want to help support. And they had pizzas, beers, waters, soft drinks, all that free of charge just for being in the dugout club. You can get your $25 back the one game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long that'll last, but for right now, if you're not in the dugout club and you're going to a baseball game, you are missing out. But just the walking around and seeing all the different people just taking in this facility for the first time. A lot of them, first time they've been able to come in. And you're just hearing the chatter about this is awesome. This blows away anything that I've thought when I see this on video or on photos or anything. I can't believe this. And all the pageantry, of having Rick Reed there, Jeff Montgomery there, daughter of Jack Cook was there, all the former baseball players, and the same thing again today. We had a lot of those same people there. But nothing can compare to we get out of the top of the first and we go into the bottom of the first and everyone's waiting to see, Marshall bat for the first time. And the very first pitch was a fastball that Trey Hondras just turned on and smacked about 355 to 370 feet down the left field for a home run. For the very first pitch, the very first swing. I mean, there's your trivia answer in 20 some years.
Yeah.
He got the first homer. He got the first hit. He was the first batter for the Herd, but it was on the very first pitch. And I said it almost immediately. I wasn't filming every pitch coming and going, so I did not get him hitting the homer. I'm jumping up and screaming with everybody else as it goes out, but then I get the phone out and I get him as he's roughly rounding third base.
Mm-hmm.
And I tweeted that out and I said, you cannot script this any better. And just about everybody else had the same reaction as me, as you can't write it any better. You couldn't script it any better. Hollywood could not have made this any better, that you're waiting decades, 50 plus years easily. And all the different times of we're going to get a stadium, we're going to get a stadium, we're going to get a stadium. The very first pitch, once we get the stadium, home run.
Yeah.
We go on to shut out Manhattan 3-0. Just an absolute perfect day in the Jack.
Yeah. It was the second part of what became a pretty perfect day, near perfect day altogether. The softball team won their home opener. They lost the second game, but they won the home opener. Then the baseball team won the home opener. And we've already talked about kind of sort of, the basketball team being champions. Their finale had nothing to do with that. It was a foregone conclusion already. But those were the three things that kind of had to happen. And, Marshall captured those moments wonderfully. I have since seen some posts on Instagram and stuff that Heard Baseball had put out, and they had a different angle, of course, than the ESPN angle of Trey Hondra's home run. And the angle that they got was a money shot, man. I mean, that was when I said that's one for the ages. It is, because that was the culmination of so many promises unkept for so many years, and then promises kept that started several years ago with Mike Hamrick. And the only thing that really is a downer about this is that we were unable to get the park built for Jack Cook to take part in the ceremonies.
Yeah.
But if it happened sooner, then Trey Hondras isn't at the plate for that. And that's a moment that Herd fans will talk about forever. And it's, I know it sounds kind of hokey a little bit, but there are fans in those stands, young fans particularly, that will talk about this with their kids and maybe even their grandkids if they're a baseball family, and it's just baseball's in their blood, and they'll talk about that. Dad, tell me about the first game at the Jack. Were you there? Oh, I was there. I was 12 years old, and Trey Hondras stepped in the bottom of the first, and the very first pitch he saw, he took it over the fence, and the place the roof blew off. It was so cool. Marshall needed that. I mean, that, don't talk about scripting and all that kind of stuff. Dude, Marshall just needed that. That baseball program needed that. Every last player, former player that was there, they needed that. And I'll tell you who I was really happy for on a side note was Coach Donnelly, because he'd been there for so long before, and he was gone, and then he came back just this off season, and to be right there, right there with the Donnelly family history with Herd Baseball, I know that was special. That was just so cool, man. Such a cool moment. Those that were in attendance will never forget that. And I'll tell you what, even though it was 3,124 fans, that story will get passed around as if there were 31,240 fans in attendance, because you know how it goes. But crowning achievement right there for Herd Baseball. And to top it all off, yeah, we get the win, which is awesome. That's the ultimate goal. Of course, you mentioned this before. The first pitch thrown at Jack Cook Field was a strike, and you kind of have to have that. That was so cool. And for fans, everybody got to go around and try to find their brick in the concourse, which was cool. So, or not the concourse, but the pathway leading up to home plate. So, standing ovation. Obviously, I can't clap on the podcast, but a whole lot of respect and all the props go to every single mover, shaker, and player that made this happen for the Herd fans to be there and be able to sit in a seat and watch the Herd take the field at Jack Cook Field for the first time. I mean, they were under the gun when they announced it, and they were like, we will have it ready for the first home series. And by God, they did it. So shout out to Christian Spears and his team and everybody that was involved with getting the baseball field project started, like I said, with Mike Hamrick and that team. And then when Christian Spears got the job, picked the ball up and ran with it. And now here we are. And we have a ballpark, dude. We have a freaking ballpark that a team plays on and fans can go sit in. Even though I knew it was going to happen, it still feels surreal to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because now we get to talk about games. And there's nothing cooler than that.
Well, today's game, we still had 2,196 there in attendance today. Game started pretty well, and then the wheels fell off in the second inning. Just had some control issues, walked some batters, got the bases loaded, had some hard hits that were given up, and some others that just found holes through the infield, and they put up a 5 spot on us.
Yeah.
Before the inning was over, we bring in a reliever, and he pitched 7 1/3 innings of shutout baseball. And I just cannot get over like how he just came in and kind of dominated and gave us that puncher's chance, because we only had 2 hits, and the 4 spot that we put up in the 7th inning, we got 1 hit and it was an infield single. I mean, our bats just were not on it today, but we found a way by walks, wild pitch, infield hit, and all that, put up a 4 spot and have that puncher's chance to even score and win the game because of and I've got the name here, Bryce Blevins. It was on the top of my head. I couldn't think of it. 7 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. He got a standing O as he walked off. Would have been great to have a walk-off victory to finish carry on from there. But we've got another chance at it tomorrow. Again, 3 p.m. We have tickets that we're giving away. Not sure when this episode will be up, if it'll be up before or after that. But
it'll probably be up after, but it doesn't matter because we're giving tickets away all season long.
Yeah. But anyway, that's it. We could talk for another hour about this opening weekend. I hope that we can have more thoughts, talk more about the Dugout Club, get more people energized into going to the games and all that stuff. But we know that they have a game coming up tomorrow at 3, and then Bellarmine on March the 5th, which is Tuesday, and I believe that game is at 6 p.m. So that's what we got until we record our next show. So move on over to softball. They lost to Indiana 12-6 last Sunday. Again, that was kind of going on while we were recording. And then they started off this weekend red hot. They beat Purdue 7-4 on Friday, and then they lost to Butler 3-2. We gave up 2 runs in the first inning with a pitcher that we had to replace before the first inning was over. Again, had some control issues there, and we came back and almost won that game, but we lost 3-2. Well, we made up for it today because we played Butler again and beat them 11-3. Had a walk-off by Bella Gerlach, who has had a monster weekend this weekend. We beat them in 5 innings because we were up 8 runs. That was the 8th run on that 3-run shot to put them down. Then we beat Radford 5-0. And that was under the lights for the entire game. You know, the lights came on a little bit for that first game. But finished the weekend tomorrow again versus Purdue. That game is 1:30 p.m. And before I throw it to you on this, I just want to say that when you're out there and you see the new lights that we have, they're not just lights, the same as baseball. They are reacting to the sounds that are played through the press box and everything. They go off when you hit a homer. They're making the lights flicker and do stuff. It is very, very cool to see.
Yep, the fan experience is definitely upgraded at the Dot this year. New seats for you to sit in behind the home plate area, and I'm just going to call them herd lights because that's what they are in the cam. So herd lights kind of deal at both stadiums. Bella Gerlach had a monster weekend, or is having a monster weekend. 2 home runs on the weekend so far, 4 RBIs in that big win against Butler, like you talked about. But today, not to be outdone, Camahalis sends 2 out of the park. So in a 5-0 win, Camahalis hits 2 home runs, goes 2 for 3, has 2 RBIs. Caja Park's also 2 for 3 on the day, with the other 3 RBIs coming by 3 different herd players. Brooklyn Ulrich, Bub Faringa, and Riley Lucas all tally RBIs on the day. And also, Bub Faringa is your winning pitcher. So she's double dipping in the circle and in the lineup. She's been a real baller this year. She's done that several times already. When you're, a lot of times when we were pitching last year, that's what they were doing. They were pitching. They were not also hitting. But Bub, that's a great weapon, right? Because Bub's a big bat, and she could do it in the circle, and then she's doing it in the lineup, and that allows Coach Zirkel to get an extra bat into the lineup without, affecting anything else, which is pretty cool. So need to finish out the series. Another one with, would you say, Purdue? I think it is.
Purdue tomorrow at 1:30.
Yeah. Turn out. I mean, those games are free, so you can
Yeah.
turn out and check out the Herd try to go 2-0 against Purdue on the weekend. By the way, this was the Thundering Herd Invitational, and that's something we talked about with Coach Zirkle that they would be able to do more of now that we, in fact, have lights at the dot. So that allows them to host teams, host tournaments, and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool because that's, of course, a little bit of a boost to the local economy as parents and fans of those opposing teams, more of them can come to town at the same time and stay in the hotels and eat it in the restaurants and, all that good stuff. But really, really solid weekend so far for our Diamond Sports teams. Let's close it out strong. Let's see if the Herd can win the series against Manhattan on the baseball side. And let's see if the softball team can have a really good record in this Thundering Herd Invitational. I think that would push them to 4-1 on the weekend. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Now I got to fact check you. Bella Gerlach had 3 homers.
Oh, that's right. I missed it. Sorry, that's right.
And
I'm gonna have to turn off your fact checking button because you're getting me far too much.
Well, it's the only mistakes we've ever made in this show, so no big deal. I do need to talk about a couple of things out here, and the first thing is it was absolutely freezing at these games, and I misread somehow the temperature. So I'm wearing the new Marshall baseball jersey, button up, short sleeve, and I was freezing mere minutes away from having to go to the hospital for hypothermia, I'm convinced. And a kind senior citizen gave me a little pullover fleece jacket to put on. And I just want to give Joey Lucas, this kind senior citizen guy, want to give him a real big thank you there for giving me that fleece just to warm me up. But also got to meet a new baseball dad, a parent that was out there in the outfield for the first time this year. His daughter is on the team as a freshman, and didn't get the okay as, hey, can I mention your name, her name, that sort of thing. So just really cool to interact with someone new and stuff like that. But finally got to say, when we got 2,196 people leaving the baseball stadium, more than 50 should come over and hang out at the softball game. I've got to call everybody out that's not doing this already. You are missing out. I don't care if you were going to grab a drink or something. Put a cooler out in the outfield grass, sit there. It's free. You don't have to worry about anything. There's plenty, you were walking right past it for your vehicles that you parked over in the old ACF lots or down the street, wherever you were. Get your butts over to the dot. Look at the energy that these girls are bringing. And they deserve 2,000 people at their games, just like baseball deserves 2,000 at theirs. And again, it's free. They put out more seating. I know that you haven't been able to be in for this yet, but they put up bleachers in the outfield around from the right field to basically center field. It's open. And they've got maybe 5 sets of bleachers. That's a lot of outfield seating out there. But you can bring a lawn chair. You can stand. You can sit in the back of your truck. That's what just about everybody does. You can sit out there, tailgate, have a really good time, interact with some player parents that are there for every single game. You will not want to miss going to a softball game. I'm challenging everybody to leave your baseball game when it's over, get over to softball and watch our girls kick some butt.
And that's going to happen many times this season, that both of our Diamond Sports teams are going to be at home the same weekend. And that should just be the thing. If you're like, well, we're going to go to the baseball game, well, then you should at least set aside an extra hour, even if you can't stay for the whole softball game. Go over there and pack the dot for as long as it can be packed. And then if you've got to go head to dinner or whatever you got to do, but work an extra hour, if not 2 hours, into your Saturday or into your Sunday to benefit seeing good Herd sports at the from both softball and baseball. Man, you're right, it is a lot of fun, and the folks that are there are some of the coolest fans in the land when it comes to herd fans. Like the
Mm-hmm.
softball fans are awesome, and they love to see new fans coming over and checking out the games. Man, you'll have a great time.
Yeah. They have more games coming up midweek and stuff like that. We'll get into that later. We really need to wrap up the show, so I'm going to move on over to men's basketball. We'll have the schedule up. We always do on softball, so just keep watching Twitter because we're going to let you know when they're playing. Men's basketball lost at Georgia Southern 87-73 on Wednesday, and then at Georgia State 82-79 on Friday. Finished with a 7-game losing streak for the end of the year, 3-11 in their final 14 games. We talked about it ad nauseum last week, how it's just not been good basketball. It's not been fun. We don't want to talk about it. Fans don't want to hear about it. It's just not been good basketball, and it's not the record that we want to see, and we can't wait until the ship gets righted. And no better chance to do that than in the first game of the Sun Belt Conference tournament, which is against Georgia State again. And we just lost to them 82-79 on their home court. This is a neutral court, only a 3-point loss. So let's see what we can do. That's Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Be on ESPN Plus. We really, really need a win. Otherwise, season is over.
Yeah, here's the thing. Marshall goes into the SBC tournament as the number 10 seed. Mm-hmm. They're riding a 7-game losing streak. Mm-hmm. It's been horrendous, right? No fans are happy about it. Players aren't happy about it. Coaches can't be happy about it. Nobody's happy
Nobody's happy about it.
So here's the thing. You got to go on a 4-game win streak when you're in the midst of a 7-game losing streak to have a hope of postseason play. Otherwise, it ain't happening, right? So unless they can go catch fire and win 4 straight, the season at some point will be over.
Yeah.
And it's just been bad. There's no way to sugarcoat it. You know, we talked about, if this guy would have stayed, that guy wouldn't have transferred, blah, 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 blah. Well, it happened, okay? And what we were able to put on the floor throughout the course of the season could not get it done enough. I'm not calling anybody out.
Right.
The record tells you that. They couldn't get it done enough. And that sucks because one of the 2 major sports that the majority of herd fans like live and die by and hang their athletic department wide fandom on is men's basketball. The other is by and large football. And when you do that, of course, I say this last week, I'll say it again, you miss out on a lot of great athletic teams if all you care about is men's basketball and football. I love those guys too. I love those teams too, a whole lot. But I'm a better, more, not a better fan, but I'm a more like, I'm a happier fan because I pay attention to track and field and women's basketball and softball and baseball and all of it. Even golf. I don't know squat about golf, but when our team, our men's golf team finishes 4th out of 20, that's cool. That's a thumbs up on the weekend. I can get behind the women's basketball team being regular season champions and closing out on a 7-game win streak, and the softball team doing really well in the Thundering Herd Invitational on their home field at the Dot, and then the baseball team winning the inaugural game at the Jack. It's all mitigated, and I don't really care that Marshall basketball lost, right? Because my fandom is hedged with all these other positives that are going along. So it sucks. But basketball season is coming to an end sooner or later, and then I'll leave the whatever talk to what other fans that want to talk about, and this needs to happen, that needs to happen, whatever. Whenever something happens, if something happens, we'll talk about it. But until then,
Until then, we just want what the players, the coaches, the fans, everybody wants, and that's winning basketball.
Win, that's all you want.
And again, these athletes are hardest on themselves, and we're not here to beat them up, and we're not here to beat the coaches up. They're hard on themselves as well. We just want winning basketball. We know they do too. But let's move on to what is winning basketball and talk about women's basketball to finish this up. They beat Georgia State 97-69 on Tuesday to clinch the regular season championship, which we talked about. And then they steamrolled Georgia Southern 90-43, and it was actually 90-39 with a minute to go, and we let them have 2 gimme baskets. That was on Friday for senior night. Just a quick thing here. Abby Beeman, Brianna Campbell, and Tamia Lawhorn were the 3 that walked, if it were, after the game and got their flowers and their jerseys. They have the double bye as the number 1 overall team, and will face the winner of Georgia State and App State, and that'll be on Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep. I think it's going to be hard to bet against the Herd. If you're a betting man, it's hard to bet against the Herd. They're just damn good. And now that they're back to essentially full strength, even the bad matchup at the time with James Madison doesn't seem like nearly as bad of a matchup, because now we have like you say, a true forward, but somebody that can protect the paint a little bit more that we didn't have in that lone conference loss. But man, women's basketball, there is not enough time in the world to talk about how freaking awesome they are and the job that Coach Kim and her staff and these players have done. I mean, I would love to continue to talk about them, but dang, man, it's like there's just not enough good things. That's all it is. There's just not enough good things you can say. They surprised everybody. The only ones that probably truly aren't surprised at what happened is Kim, because like this is just kind of what she does, is install a system and win. You know, she did it at Glenville, and I'm sure she thought, I can do it here. My cupboard wasn't bare when I got here, and I brought in some other players that could help me out. And so she was probably the only one that wasn't kind of on the fence and play. We'll see how it goes. Well, the rest of us were pretty much won over about halfway through the season.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say once we were about 7-8 games into that 10-game win streak, most fans were like, damn, we're pretty good. This is pretty good. And I'd like to take this opportunity to point out she's in year 1 of a 7-year contract. So she's 1 for 1 on regular season conference championships with a conference tournament to play. I'm not saying anything else beyond that. I'm just saying we're in year 1 and she's 1 for 1. And she hasn't had a full complement of recruiting, a full recruiting cycle. She came in and just had to deal with, a couple of transfers and what was on the roster and the turnover from the previous coaching staff, right? So I don't think you can find too many things that you can frown upon when it comes to Herd women's basketball at this moment in time. So I'm just going to leave it to being in Pensacola. I'm not going to Pensacola, but I'm going to leave it to them to handle their business in Pensacola, and I cannot freaking wait to talk about it. I don't want to speculate. I don't want to call anything because I have really bad luck with that. But I'm just saying, if you were a betting man, it would probably be hard to bet against Marshall in this tournament. That's all I'm saying. I am not a betting man.
I don't bet anymore either. But again, the only team that I think that can beat us in this tournament is us.
Right. Yeah. Yep, you're right.
That's all I've got for Around the Herd. I do have one small item here, hot right off the press.
Oh, okay.
Really upset with Mr. Brad Nestor. When you're listening to this, Brad, just got a notice here on Facebook that old Brad and his wife were in the stands for the softball when I was out in the outfield, and I didn't know it, and I have to find out about it on here. So,
see, you really find out who your friends are. You really find out.
I'm calling shenanigans, sir, and shenanigans have been declared, so all bets are off. But we'll deal with this. But and again, I won't be there tomorrow because I'm going south for a different event. But anyway, that's all I've got to say. Do you have anything you want?
I'll say this.
Yeah.
He can make it up to us by coming back in for spring game weekend and taking part in all the festivities that are going to be going on that weekend, because the ThunderCast right now, the full complement of the crew should be in Huntington. So I can't believe that you didn't at least get a, hey man, we're in town, but Brad, we still love you. You can make it up to us by coming back to Huntington at least in late April for spring game weekend on the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Mark the calendar, buddy, because we plan to see you there. That's all I got, though. You can take us out of here.
All right. So whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Jack, the new Jack, whether you see us at the Dot, or whether you see us bumming a Columbia fleece jacket off a nice elderly man, Joey Lucas, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the ThunderCast. We'll see you next week. Later.